Recently, the Wall Street Journal published an article talking about the effects of the 2018 shared parenting law in the state of Kentucky. And as the media generally does, they just had to put their agenda and spin on it. In the past 50 years, since the advent of no-fault divorce, marriage has been under attack. Divorce rates, which were once around 20 to 25% in the 1960s, have now exploded to the point that more marriages now end in divorce than stay together. What was once till death do us part is now till I get tired, bored, or think I can do better. Advocates have long argued that the biggest reason the divorce rate is so high is because women are now incentivized to end their marriages. Incentivized by the fact that they know that over 85 to 90% of the time, they'll get the house, the car, the kids, and a substantial payment from their ex each month for doing so. It's why now over 55% of all marriages end in divorce. And now we're starting to see the result. Broken families have led to a broken society, one that's on the verge of collapse if something isn't done. And the best way to address that is by enacting shared parenting in every state. And as the Wall Street Journal recently pointed out in the article written by one Rachel Wolf, divorce has plummeted in Kentucky since the implication of this law. In fact, filings dropped 25% from 2016 to 2023, far faster than the national average. And why is that? Because Kentucky flipped the script by making 50-50 joint custody the starting point, unless there's proof one parent is dangerous. Imagine, no longer does one parent win it all while the other is reduced to being nothing more than a walking wallet. A mere visitor who, if they're lucky, might get to see their kids 4 days a month. Instead, it now says both parents are to be viewed as equals. And in the end, who's the real winners? The kids. Suddenly, divorce wasn't the golden ticket it used to be. Turns out when women can't cash in on custody, child support, and government-backed leverage, a whole lot fewer of them end up rushing to the courthouse. And we're going to dive into that article and talk about the good, but also expose the inherent anti-male, anti-father bias that still bleeds through it, and which dominates the media and its coverage in general on all of these issues. Most especially how that bias is used to misrepresent and perpetuate an outright lie, all in order to discredit 50-50 custody. Stay tuned as we dive in and talk about why Kentucky's law needs to be the blueprint for all 50 states. Hey everyone, if this is your first time here, my name is Dan, and I invite you to join us here on Men Need to Be Heard, where we cut through the hype, cut through the lies, and expose the truth about how men and fathers are viewed in today's society. And today we're doing that by diving into Kentucky's equal custody experiment and what it's actually revealed about the real motivations behind divorce in America. Spoiler alert, it's not always we just grew apart. It's more a case of women saying, I knew I'd get the kids, the house, and a big paycheck from my ex for the next 18 to 21 years. And let's call this what it really is. A test run, a proof of concept, a social experiment proving that many, dare I say most women, think divorce isn't about escaping a toxic marriage. No, it's about cashing in on custody leverage and the financial windfall that follows. It's why women choose to say, I'll dump this man, take his money, and then go find another. Why have one source of status and income when I can have 2, 3, maybe even 4? Kentucky removed that jackpot and put the focus back where it should have been all along, on the children. Because it is proven beyond any doubt, children do best post-divorce when they have access to both parents. Kentucky killed the I'll get the kids, you pay incentive, and as a result, divorce rates have cratered. Before 2018, custody laws in Kentucky were pretty much like every other state. They pretty much handed moms the kids and the cash flow. It was minimal risk, maximum reward for mothers and women. Oh, sure, the laws were written to be gender neutral, but in practice, well, they're anything but. Enter HB 528, Kentucky's 2018 law, where it made equal shared custody the presumption, meaning the starting point became that children should have equal access to both parents after divorce. Judges can still override it if there's abuse or legitimate reasons. They still have plenty of leeway to make their decisions. But instead of starting with the presumption that one parent will be the winner, get 100% of the time with the children and the other zero, and then making adjustments from there, they flipped the script and said, no, the default now is fairness and equality, not financial reward. And the end results, as we keep mentioning, are eye-opening. Divorce rates in Kentucky fell 25% between 2016 and 2023. That's not a coincidence. That's proof. When moms, and yes, some dads, understand that divorce doesn't guarantee custody, doesn't guarantee alimony, they may choose to stay, or they may try to work it out. At the very least, they stop weaponizing the kids. Now, I want to be completely fair here. The Wall Street Journal article did acknowledge this, to a point. But they just couldn't help themselves. They had to put their agenda and spin on it. They had to say it puts mothers and children at risk. So much so, it's right at the top of the article. Really? It puts mothers and children at risk by saying dads are parents, not visitors? Really? Let's decode what they really mean. Puts mothers and children at risk equals it removes the default advantage for moms. It removes their guaranteed custody. Children at risk equals we're uncomfortable with dads being involved, especially since it might reduce the transfer of father's wealth to the mother. That's exactly what they mean, not that they'll ever admit it. It's the same tired mantra we've heard for decades. The one that says that men can't care for children, that they're utterly incapable of taking care of them. Nor do they want to. It's pure bullshit, and it shows that the bias is so deeply ingrained in the media that they're literally incapable of covering this issue objectively. Read the article carefully. I'll put a link below so you can see it. Yes, they do illustrate some positives, but they also seek to minimize them by going to great lengths to highlight abused women. But where's the mention of abused men? Oh, right. There isn't any. Not one word about abused men or fathers and the risk they and their children face. You know, the men who have to stay trapped in their abusive marriages because they know divorce means losing their kids. Not a peep about that. Nothing but crickets. The author even went out of her way to find so-called experts who would back her narrative. She quoted a woman's shelter director, but didn't bother to seek out anyone who works with abused men. Why? Well, because the truth about male victims would have blown up her entire angle. And let's be real here. Is someone who runs a shelter that doesn't serve men really going to give you the unbiased truth about domestic violence? Especially when their income and shelter's funding depends on pushing a false narrative that seeks to deny any funding to help male victims? No, what the author did was what the media has been doing for 50 years now, pushing a false narrative that women, and only women, can be victims of domestic violence, even though there are hundreds of studies going back 5 decades that have definitively proven otherwise. Here's what the article recycled. Experts warn abuse survivors stay married because they know their kids are safer if they stay, even if it means taking some beatings. Now, that sounds fair, right? But let's be clear. By abuse survivors, they meant women, and only women, which is why the article went to great lengths to share the story of an abused woman, but nothing from an abused man. There's no mention of the men who endure abuse, no mention of the fathers forced to stay, no mention that children are at a far higher risk of abuse from mothers than they are fathers. Oh no, we can't acknowledge that, not even for a second, that a man who is being abused leaving would hand custody to an abusive mother and expose their kids to even greater harm. And let me reiterate this. The data proves it. Children are more likely to be harmed by their mothers or by the unrelated men mothers bring into the home, aka their new boyfriends and husbands, than they are from fathers. It's not even close. That's not opinion. That's an absolute, unequivocal fact. Yet the article is completely silent about it. Gee, I wonder why. The fact of the matter is, the real risk to children isn't equal custody. It's the systemic bias against fathers and men in general, a bias that's been normalized for 3 generations now. And let me be clear, the article does give us 2 sides in an attempt to be objective, though in reality, it's anything but. Yes, they do share the story of Rob Holdsworth, who loves the new law. He's not paying child support, he's closely involved with his sons, he's practically the co-president of Boy Dad Nation. Which, of course, many are attacking because, wait for it, he's not paying support, even though he has the kids the same amount of time. How dare he not pay his fair share? And then, of course, there's Kimberly Rummage, a woman who survived near-fatal abuse and a protective order, only to have a judge give her ex 50% custody anyway. As she said, nothing's changed. Now, look, I don't want to be dismissive of what happened to Miss Rummage, but are we really saying those 2 stories compare? Which do you think is going to hit more with readers? And in case you can't figure it out, let me show you by illustrating some responses to the article that were posted on LinkedIn. For example, there was one person who also happens to be a journalist, I might add, who said, and I quote, "It haunts me how many abusive men keep custody of their children after evidence of abuse." Really, darling? Well, let me ask you something. Why doesn't it haunt you how many abusive women keep custody? Funny how you willfully chose to ignore that. And that's exactly what I did. I brought that up. To which she replied, and again I quote, "I'm not sure what you're getting at. As I said, it's a complicated, nuanced situation." No, you specifically named men, specifically named fathers. So, really? I guess you define nuance by painting fathers as abusers while absolving mothers completely, right? Her intention is obvious. Her misandry so deeply ingrained, she can't get out of its way. Then there was another who said it's been her experience as a former reporter, notice a theme here, who covered courts that courts favor abusive fathers. Well, I don't know what court she was covering, but as someone who's observed hundreds of cases in family court, it is quite evident, abuse or not, mom's getting custody either way. Something any reputable divorce attorney or court observer would tell you is true. Again, we see how so-called journalists are so blinded by their inherent misandry and bias, they simply cannot acknowledge that mothers are abusive, or that they file false allegations of abuse at ever-increasing numbers against fathers to get advantages when it comes to custody. No, instead, these journalists hide behind the long disproven notion that only men are abusive and we should just believe all women. It illustrates just how toxic the media is towards men and fathers, and how they simply cannot be trusted. Which is also, I might add, why the Wall Street Journal brands the law as a model, choosing to gloss over the real challenges that victims, especially male victims of domestic violence, face in court. Let me state what should be obvious to anyone. Kentucky's law should be the blueprint for every state for one simple, irrefutable reason. Because it's what's best for the children, something the Wall Street Journal conveniently ignores. Divorce drops when you remove the custody jackpot. Families that still split, kids end up getting balanced. They get to see both parents. Those parents cooperate better because there's no longer a financial incentive not to. False allegations are reduced, and dads actually get to be dads, not weekend mascots. But the media still hyper-focuses on shielding women, shielding mothers, on protecting the broken system and its inherent gender bias against fathers. The one that ignores men's pain, ignores men's risks, ignores men's abuse. The truth is, even with 50-50 custody laws, fathers still face uphill battles in court. But at least it's a start. As I have said, the system is broken and it's long past time we not only acknowledged that, but addressed it. Simply put, our children are paying the price. Children of divorce who lose access to a parent are more likely to drop out of school, more likely to abuse drugs and alcohol, more likely to unalive themselves or shoot up schools, and they're more likely to get pregnant as teens. The list goes on. We spend billions on trying to address those issues after the fact, when we could fix most of them by simply addressing the real cause up front, by making shared parenting the law in all 50 states. Anyone who fights against equal custody isn't saying I care about kids, isn't saying I want to do what's best for the children. No, my friends, what they're saying is I care more about protecting mothers and maximizing their payouts. Kentucky's law proves it. Incentives shape behavior. Remove the automatic custody jackpot and divorce suddenly looks less attractive. It really is that simple, but it's only a first step. Society needs to wake up and fast if it wants to survive. If we want fewer divorces, if we want more intact families, if we want higher birth rates, if we actually want what's best for our children, then we must flip the incentives and biases that are so inherent and deep in the current system. This isn't anti-woman. It's pro-children. It's pro-human. It's not about moms versus dads. It's about the kids who deserve both. And if that scares you, if that upsets you, well, maybe the problem isn't the law. Maybe the problem is you. Because let's be real, we've had 50 years of incentivizing divorce, fatherlessness, and broken homes. And look where it's gotten us. Maybe it's time we try incentivizing families instead. Because kids don't need winners and losers in court. They need both parents, and anything less isn't in the best interest of the child. It's nothing more than state-sanctioned child neglect. So what do you think? Should 50-50 custody be the default presumption in all 50 states? And how do we go about making that happen? Let me know down in the comments. And if you enjoyed this video, do me a favor, hit that like button and make sure you subscribe to the channel. We talk about the issues that men and boys face, and your subscribing and liking helps me to grow the channel and reach even more people. All right, until next time, this is Dan. Have an awesome day.